Today's guest is the host of the Minot Sports Podcast. Joining me now is Cole Clementich. Cole, another independent venture here in the Minot podcasting landscape. I mean, where do you get the idea to start a show like this as you're entering into your college career of broadcasting?
Hello, Ben. Thank you. So I went to Minot High all 4 years of high school, and it just dawned on me because I got into sports, I want to say, before high school started, and it wasn't for a while until I got into the high school athletics, and so I thought, man, this is really cool. I should go to these more often. Well, it wasn't until junior year where it just all of a sudden became a passion of mine, and I've enjoyed it ever since. And I told myself, let's just hopefully turn this into a career, and hopefully there's a place close by where I can get started, like with a podcast or something like that, or anything in sports for potential future career. But I guess when it came to senior year and at my grad party, I had a lot of the athletes show up, and I was very supportive of them. They were very supportive of me, and they kept asking me, what do you want to do for your career, for a future career at the college? And I specifically told them, I kind of want to do a local sports podcast. I don't know how I was going to make it work out, but thankfully I found the broadcasting department at Minot State, which I want to give credit to all the significant members for helping me out there.
And a lot of the kids that I spoke to, a couple of Neil's classes, and definitely like the new wave, even since I graduated from UMD in like 2013, and everybody is all about trying to just hit crowds on social media, and podcast is the number one thing, even over just like YouTubing or whatever. I mean, when I was in school, we did student radio, and that was just some talk shows, but it wasn't like as open-ended as podcasts were, whether it was play-by-play on games or regulating breaks. And in this medium, you can just go, and it sounds like guys your age are super excited about it. And over the course of the episodes that you've had, Facebook and Instagram, right?
I have Instagram and Twitter. I am thinking about Facebook in the future, though.
Okay, great. So over the course of the episodes that you've posted, you've done things like standalone interviews, little post-game reaction snippets, and overall, like, your clips have grown to maybe like a minute or two to more long-form stuff. I mean, what has been your process in maybe starting a little small and then building up?
The learning process, so whether it came from either Neil or Lee Johnson in the department, they've kind of given me some kind of words of advice, just to kind of get the process moving. And so when I started this, I kind of, like you said, I did start slow, kind of have episodes that are like 5 to 10 minutes long maybe. And then, as I grew in the algorithm and the pronunciation, all the trying to get all sorts of words out there, all sorts of sports information, it eventually got up there to where I just started posting like 20-minute episodes. Heck, my last 2 episodes, they're almost half an hour long. So it's been, just kind of growing casually, and it gets more comfortable, as you get towards the finish.
What does it take to work an episode together? It's not just spewing when the record button is on, What's kind of your preparation going in?
I guess I don't really put too much preparation into each episode. Well, usually specifically when I was working in the studio, sometimes, like before I start the episode, or before I start recording rather, I'll just pull up like a Word document, and I'll type up some stuff just to kind of help me get started for each episode. So it's not much, but it's really all I've done so far. I'm planning on taking a class this upcoming fall that I think will definitely help me into getting prepared more and talking more clearly and freely without too long of a pause. So that's the plan right now.
You had to love just having the broadcasting department at MSU just literally right here. Did you have anything else to consider, or was it just obviously a number one choice right from the start?
Before I started college, actually, at my orientation last year, I actually didn't know Minot State had a broadcasting department. And at my orientation, where my advisor, Heather Martin, was getting me started for signing up for classes, I specifically told her I want to do this. And yeah, she got me signed up for Gen Eds at the start. And a little while later, I found that multimedia studies was a major, and I thought maybe I could turn that into some sort of sports content. And the good thing with my advisor is that she actually found this intro to broadcasting class that Neil taught for me, and it had to take away a gen ed class that I was planning on taking, but I thought, let's try it. And I took the class, and Neil showed me around, and of course the other members of the department showed me around, and I found the radio room, and it was just like, I think I found my thing. So it's been great. Yeah.
When I went to school, I definitely knew that I was in like the sports fan crowd that wasn't good enough to play the sport, so I might as well do the sports journalism and stay right around with it. And there was a lot of us going in there, and it definitely takes some investment in just pursuing the education to it as well, even though they always say anybody that has a microphone has a podcast. So I'm just kind of curious, as you get to that next step, already working independently and taking some coursework at MSU, what have you kind of learned the most already about the industry and what you like to produce in broadcasting?
Just the fact of how much it's grown, and going back, like let's say 10 years ago, podcasting, it probably wasn't as big as it is right now. And of course, you got all these cool new graphics, all these sorts of new segments that the sports industry is producing, whether it's like Fox Sports or CBS or NBCSN, what that sort of thing. And there's just been the broadcasting field. It's growing a lot, and there's lots of new ideas, lots of entrepreneurs out there with just all sorts of brand new content to produce and new ways to produce it as well. So I even hear it from Neil a lot, saying you guys are in a good spot right now with how broadcasting is going in today's society.
Where do you kind of want to set apart? It sounds like the availability is there for everybody. It's here for me. It's here for anybody that wants to do something like this. And just where's kind of like your niche or breakaway from the grain of what you can, maybe what a lot of people can do?
I guess the best way for me to answer that question is to kind of, I found my passion in sports, and so I guess locally, I just want to take it, grow it gradually, and just don't reach out to all sorts of people all at once. I have 3 more years of college left, so I have lots of time to grow the podcast and to reach out to all sorts of people. But I guess, just reaching out to as much of the Minot people as I can, and I post highlights on Instagram mostly. Twitter, I just kind of, retweet the major sources. Don't want to compete with Minot Daily too much just yet, but I guess just reaching out to a large Minot audience and posting as much highlights as I can possible.
We've had a lot of paper boys on the show already, so they'll just love hearing that, Cole. This is Cole from the Minot Sports Podcast, Instagram and Twitter. Talking just one more point on the growth that you and Neil have been talking about in your classes and on the show so far. I remember just an anecdote from Big Cat from Barstool. I paused an episode of Pardon My Take so we can start rolling on this today. Yeah, I remember when he would tell stories about coming up on Barstool Chicago, and it wasn't even legitimized like back then. And he would say like, there would be these awkward moments where people would ask him, like, oh, what do you do? And whether he was marginally famous around Chicago or even when he was first starting out, whether he wanted to be left alone or just got a weird reaction from people when he was a rookie. He was just going with, oh, I'm a blogger, and people will just shrug off of it, you know. And
Yeah.
nowadays, it's just huge, and you can even like watch him on Coach Doug's now. There's no sports going on, and it's just been absolutely captivating. And I tune in on every game, especially now that he's at Tennessee, one of the schools I almost went to, good old Rocky Top. So it's an amazing
Yep.
how the industry has grown for anybody that wants to give this a shot, for sure. Now, tell me a little bit about the coverage footprint that you want to have on the Minot Sports Podcast.
So again, speaking about the highlights that I post on Instagram, what I do basically is, I'm guessing you know about Snapchat. So
Yep.
you take the photo on the camera setting on Instagram, or you take the video, and I just kind of give like a nice view of the venue that I'm at. So, like for hockey, for example, I'll get a video of all the hockey players coming out for warm-ups, coming from the bench in the locker rooms, and there's music playing in the background. So I kind of like to make it a cool little setting of that. And I write a little caption on there saying, I'm here at this place, getting ready to cover this event, getting ready to produce highlights for you guys. And so I'll give out an update of when the game started, starting lineups if that's applicable. I'll do goal highlights or home runs, or just basketball's kind of tricky, but I'll give out like a score update for basketball once in a while, and I'll try to incorporate some players, like who's dominating, who's kind of standing out so far, and usually for the end of the game I'll post the final score, and then afterwards I'll go out to reach out to an athlete, grab them for an interview with my Sony recorder. Thanks to my older brother, I now have a tripod, and so once I get an iPhone mount for my phone, I can do video interviews without having to use the Sony recorder. And so I just post the link on both my Instagram and Twitter. I'll send it to my email first, and then I'll touch up whatever else I need to do. And that's just, I tell people I got an interview with this person, and that's usually how a night goes for me.
Yeah, I'm jealous of all you guys, whether it's the radio guys, the paper guys, or the online guys like yourself, about how you're able to stay for the entire game and get the whole picture. I got to get a couple buckets and go to like 4 different places and stuff. And you guys you're working the whole time, but at least you can be at the game all night long. That's good for you. Now, how much, or was it pretty simple to build up the rapport of being able to just get down right next to these high school teams and pull aside like a Nick Murphy after a hockey game or something like that? How
I
open
guess.
is it? Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
How open is it?
It's very open because having went to Minot High, I'm familiar with a lot of the not just the athletes, but with a lot of the people that even aren't athletes over there. And so I have a lot of connections over there with Minot High. I'm closely connected with Mr. Lundy, the athletic director up there. And so it's really easy to reach out to people when the connections are there and such. So it's really easy, like I said.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking back, obviously nothing in the spring, but from what you dealt with in the fall and winter, what's kind of your step-by-step assessment of how teams around here performed, whether it was Minot High or MSU?
I just kind of look at how their overall season went, and who stood out really well this year, and kind of who has the most opportunity to improve. And I don't go by players, but I also go by like the team performance as well. I also kind of do some episodes, like I'll do like West Region tournament preview or state tournament preview for the show. I'll kind of go out of the way, not make a regular episode, just kind of do like a full-on preview of what's happening. And I do have some plans to give out like a preview of Minot State athletics. What could we look for this upcoming fall and winter? Which teams could stand out? Which teams have the most potential, and which could maybe fall off a cliff a little bit? It's just kind of a little bit of predicting the future, that sort of thing. So I guess that's just kind of what I'm planning for right now, but that's mostly what I'm doing. So, for
So
sure.
you've gotten the relationship with the school about pretty simply being able to get guests on and stuff. So when you're looking to book guests, who exactly are you looking for? Are you trying to make it super timely compared to a game close to like the blog post or podcast post that you do? And once you get a guest on, I mean, what topics do you want to tackle? Do you just want to do straight up game coverage and how their team's doing? If you try to branch out at all, I mean, what do you kind of look for from these kids?
Yeah, mostly the game stuff, just kind of some expectations that they have for themselves and for the team. I also do kind of think about, how else I could, expand, our conversation together. Just kind of ask them, how's everything going? What's training looking like and all that sort of thing, like training for the off season, that sort of thing. And I guess, yeah, one thing is that when the MSU softball season started, I wanted to reach out to one of the softball players as soon as I could. Thankfully, Roxanne Inez, she's also a broadcasting major. She was easy to reach, so I spoke to her a few days after their first tournament in Vegas. And surprisingly, other than that, I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me. I've had Coach Thompson from the Sabre Dogs. I had Blake Friars from MSU Hockey. I had Shane Ledecky from MSU Football. They've all reached out to me saying, "Hey, we'd like to come on your show to talk about this," and I'd be happy to do that with them. And so I've been very lucky in that department. So it's just, other than that, you just got to reach out to who you want to talk to. And I kind of want to branch out diverse to all sports. So I'm doing this one series right now. It's called the Instagram Live series. I go live on the Instagram, and thankfully they have a setting where you can have one person join your stream. And so it's just all, I'm on the top, the other person's on the bottom, and people can see both our screens at once. And I'm asking, whichever athlete I'm interviewing, I'm asking them all sorts of questions. Like, I spoke to Sydney Dollinger. She's coming up here to play soccer at Minot State from Bismarck Legacy High School. I kind of asked her, what's summer looking like? What was the recruiting process like? So that's kind of what I've been doing with the athletes. And for the athletes leaving Minot High to go elsewhere, I kind of ask the same thing, like, what's the recruiting process like? What's preparation like for you heading into college, not going to Minot? So I just been doing that sort of thing.
How much of a left turn was COVID-19 for you, for the kind of content that you ended up putting out?
It was rough at first because, of course, sports canceled and everything, wasn't happening. We all had to stay home, and it was rough for the first couple of weeks for me, but I managed, just to kind of release one thing here and there just to kind of keep the Instagram alive. And thankfully, we got some more action starting tomorrow, and action actually starting tonight. So that's great to see. But I've kind of used this COVID era as a time to grow, because when I realized, all this free time that I've been getting, I thought, why not do this? Why not add something else to the podcast? Why not expand a little more? And thankfully, I've had the Lord on my side, just telling me, blessings, and there's been a lot of things where I've been able to have an opportunity to expand. Of course, I got the tripod, and thanks to Josh Strong, I have this graphic design app that's really cool to use. And so I've been using YouTube graphics on there, and it's been good for the last couple weeks because I've been able to use time to prepare and such, I guess, if that's an overall description of the COVID era for me.
Josh Strong, great friend of the show, of course, because we used to work together at KMOT, and he's going to keep killing it the way he's doing it. Yeah, for sure, man. So, obviously, like you said, I mean, it's a struggle no matter what industry anybody's in, but always it could be a lot worse than just producing podcast stuff for fun. What we can branch out to a little bit is your professional interests. Tell us a little bit about how you land on rooting for all the Colorado teams.
So I was born in Denver. I actually did not live here in Minot before, but when I was one, my parents decided to make the move up here to North Dakota because we have family living up here. My cousins are in Devil's Lake. My older cousin just graduated from Devil's Lake, and then he's got his younger siblings, my other cousins, that are just about to embark on their senior year at Devil's Lake, and so there's a lot of athletics over there for them. But about the Colorado thing, I was born in Denver. My parents are big Colorado sports fans, and so I just kind of grew into that Denver sports realm. And if I had any professional sports teams to root for, it's the Denver teams.
For sure.
I mostly pay attention to the Broncos and Avalanche, and I'll pay some attention to the Nuggets and Rockies, but I pay a lot of my attention to the Broncos and Avs for sure.
The NHL, the first league to come back with the playoff plan, while the NBA, the first one to come back with the plan to wrap up the regular season with dates included. So let's just roll through this as sports slowly but surely start to come back here. The Avs, man, they look like they're loaded right now. Obviously, the break does God knows what for any team's momentum that goes through this situation. But how well set up do you think they are to contend for the Cup as soon as the return of this season?
Oh, it's been wonderful watching them. And the job that Joe Sakic has done, it's just been phenomenal. Like how he managed to pull off that massive deal a couple of years back to that basically like kickstarted their rebuild, and all the youth, the young talent that they were able to bring in. The NHL, they've been, as you know, going into that youth movement, and the Avs were kind of behind in that after having that horrible 48-point season. And once they got more younger legs in there, that really helped the trajectory of the team. And with I guess with all the great young talent they have on that team, they have a great chance to contend, and they're one of the top teams up there. So I'm really excited to see how they turn out for sure.
There's been a real uptick of legends coming back to their former NHL teams in a front office position. And when it comes to the Avalanche, you just gave a bunch of credit to Joe Sakic building the team. You've seen Steve Yzerman go to Tampa, but then, of course, went back to Detroit for the legacy play once he built the Lightning to what they are. But with just respect to the Avs, Sakic has it rolling. But why do you think, and it's easy to look back on it now because the Avs look awesome, but why did things maybe not work out to a longer term with Patrick Waugh as head coach? Because they were in the playoffs. I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. That 1 year, I feel like they kind of got. I will admit it. I feel like they did get a little lucky there. New coach. New coaching system. How do teams kind of approach this? So it's kind of like Dave Tippett at Edmonton. Like it's a new coaching style up there, and so the team's going to play different, and teams aren't used to this, aren't used to seeing, like the old Avs or the old Oilers or, the old, whoever's running the show. And I guess they're not ready. They don't have a specific plan as to how to stop, such as coaching scheme they haven't seen before. And so I guess with Patrick Waugh, that first year, it went great, won the Central, almost won the Presidents, but, that didn't happen. But playoffs, it didn't go too well. 7-game series, losing to Minnesota, so that was rough to see. And then I guess, the downfall kind of started there, his coaching style, maybe a little outdated. I don't know exactly what his issue was or why it didn't work out as well. But, I guess, just teams now know how his style went, and they know how to prepare better. And so I think, a little bit of the youth movement also has to do with that too, because the Avs, they still had a bunch of, I don't want to call them this, but dead weight, older legs on the team. They were just, they weren't as fast and competitive as other teams, contributing to the NHL's youth movement. And so that was kind of, again, that it was rough season to see, but rough few seasons after the playoff year, and so just things weren't working out, and I guess he quit on the team, and we found Jared Bednar, of course, from the American League, and his style matches well with today's NHL, and that it worked out there, and just didn't with Patrick Waugh's coaching style, I guess.
Yeah, when I was growing up, even just first getting into hockey, was when the Avs were just awesome in the 1990s to the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of dates me because I'm able to watch that, and you're not like unborn or in diapers or anything. But just as you like kind of evolved your fandom and look back at the history of the franchise, who are some of your favorite players and best moments for Colorado that you kind of look back on?
Well, the first Avs game I watched, it was back in 2013, the lockout season, the shortened lockout season. And we were actually at my grandmother's house, and my dad turned on the TV to Fox Sports North. They were actually playing the Wild for their first game. So luckily for me, we were able to watch it. And my dad was like, "Hey, Cole, you should look at this." And when I watched it, I thought, man, that's pretty cool, actually. And I think I remember Matt Duchene was the first player I saw score a goal for the Avs, and he was a great player. I remember watching him. I liked him during his time with the Avs, and that 30-goal season by him, that was definitely a milestone marker that I got to see. I remember seeing Jerome McGinley's 600th goal on live TV. That was fun to watch with all the players leaving the bench and just surrounding him, all sorts of hugs and just happy moments there. But the Duchene trade, that one was probably a huge one, as being an Avs fan of the time there. It was, the big blockbuster, him going to Ottawa, Kyle Turris going to Nashville, and the Avs just getting a whole splash of these pieces, 7 pieces, including draft picks and players, which, like I said earlier, helped boost their rebuild a little bit. Well, not a little bit, but actually a lot, that they got to the playoffs that year. So it was kind of tough to see him leave, but at the same time, it was in his best interest. It was actually in all the Avs' best interest, because he didn't want to be there. The players, they were kind of saying, be here with us or leave, that sort of thing. So that was wild to see, but thank goodness it turned out. And the Jared Bednar hiring, that was also a little moment that I didn't forget at the time. And like I said, that 48-point season, that was it was brutal, but thank goodness it all worked out for them in the end.
It could have been worse. You could have had the Flyers' 56-point season that I suffered through, and then you lose the draft lottery and Patrick Kane to the Blackhawks, and then they come back and Kane wins the Stanley Cup for him on a terrible goal in the Stanley Cup final. So a little bit more of a throwback, and when you change to the Nuggets, is I kind of respect their game. They show up usually around, the 2 seed-ish last season in the Western Conference of the NBA, where, the Nikola Jokic is a great player, but he's not he might not be a household name besides the Midwest fan base of the Nuggets. So, and I kind of tip my hat to him because I grew up around Villanova basketball. It was a really good scrappy brand, a responsible team on the court. So at the same time, while the Nuggets are sitting right there when they come back to play basketball again, how can they get over the top and beat one of the LA teams in a second round series?
Oh boy, yeah, it's going to take a real grind to beat the likes of a LeBron James, a Kawhi Leonard, and all the role players that they have surrounding them. And so the Nuggets, they're really all about that team-oriented style of play. And so, with Jokic as the leader. His great passing ability and Jamal Murray and Gary Harris, to complement him very well. It's going to take a lot of teamwork, and I know Cola has guarded LeBron on a few occasions where it's been a fight between the two, and usually, Nikola comes on top, LeBron one-ups him usually, and yeah, it's going to be a tough one to face, again, teams like LA and whoever else, like Houston and Oklahoma City up there for sure, but I don't know the NBA standings off the top of my head right now, but I just know Houston and Houston's up there for sure, and of course Oklahoma City. I know they were good a little while back. I'm not sure how they're doing this year, but yeah, it's a grind. So it's gonna take a lot of teamwork, I think, to slay the dragon, if you will.
How impressed were you with the Jamal Murray pick?
I actually heard a lot of good things about the Nuggets selecting Jamal Murray, and of course, I didn't know a whole lot about him at the time. Of course, I was more focused on the Avs and the Broncos still by then. But I saw this Murray pick, and everyone on social media was just raving about him. And I'm just sitting here thinking, we must have got a good player because a lot of people really like this kid. And so when he came in, he did his thing, and I was like, wow, he's good. So, yeah, good pick for sure. I like it.
What can the Nuggets really ask of a Michael Porter Jr. in the early part of his career, at least? Because obviously he got all the top billing as a college player. It was a huge get for Mizzou basketball. Then he gets hurt, and NBA teams, especially a team like the Nuggets, who are comfortable with the cast that they have in the rotations, they can play really well. They don't have to ask a lot out of him. At the same time, when you have a kid that enters the NBA and misses the balance of the first season that he could have had, the results down the road run the gambit from just horrible bust to being decent, and then maybe once in a blue moon they even hit their ceiling in a good enough amount of time for the team to give them that next contract. So what can the Nuggets demand of him when he is on the court consistently, and what do you kind of expect in the years to come from Michael Porter Jr.?
I think for a team like the Nuggets that's been up there in the Western Conference for the past few years, it's a really nice luxury pick to have when you have that good of a player drop to you at pick number 14. But it's a big, risky play. But with the Nuggets, they have the luxury to make that pick because they have all the talent to stay up there with the Lakers and Clippers and whoever else. And I think for Porter is, since he was hurt, if it's going to take time for him to develop, just, give him some time gradually. And he has flashed a few times before coronavirus stopped everything. And he's had some nice games here and there coming off the bench. And I've heard most games he's not starting. So for him to be doing that coming off the bench, it's he's a really nice complementary piece for guys like Murray and Jokic, and just playing that team game, like I said earlier. And I think he has a lot of potential, though. With his injury, he can grow to kind of like a solid player, even if he doesn't cement to that stardom that he was projected to be at. He's still going to be, a good role player for the Nuggets in the future. And like I said, I think there's a lot of potential to be had, a lot of growth, and we'll see how it goes for him for sure.
I know I started this Nuggets talk with tipping my hat to how they've been able to build their team that's competitive in a different way, not just having a super team. Everything works together well. How far do you think they can stick with the plan if they don't get to a Western Conference Finals with that? Would they have to make a trade similar to the James Harden trade, where a guy isn't getting his minutes because he hasn't fit in the system properly, and they get a bunch of other pieces, or at least to free up money for someone else?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people, of course, on Twitter and social media saying, it would look real nice for the Nuggets to win a championship, the old-fashioned way instead of building that team of superstars, like you said. And they did make it to Game 7 against the Trailblazers in the second round last year with the system that they play. And so they came that close. So I do think there's going to have to come a trade for them at some point to improve the team drastically, to hopefully get to that Western Conference final and hopefully into the NBA Finals. And I think what they have going right now, it's great to see. It just might take, a little extra push or two to get them to the next level. But right now, they're doing solid for sure.
And sometimes a quick mashup doesn't always work. All you have to do is look at like a Utah team beating the Oklahoma City team that had I don't know, George might have been beat up, but Russell and Carmelo that year anyway. So speaking of a team that's kind of trying to make that next step again, different level obviously because the Nuggets are an established playoff team in their league. Your Denver Broncos here. Even within the division of the AFC West, it seems like the team's looking up obviously at the Chiefs, but making moves to maybe look like a Chiefs-type team. Broncos going Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler out of my Penn State in this draft. I mean, looks like Drew Lock, if he's any good, should be set up this season.
Oh, yes. I loved Denver's draft this year. I did not think we would get Jeudy at pick 15. I thought we would have to trade up to get a receiver. Of course, me being the casual fan, I was hoping for a receiver. Thank goodness we got Jeudy from Alabama. And with the KJ Hamler pick, I was kind of a little surprised by it since we already got a receiver. But once I saw his highlights, I knew I was convinced that we were getting a good player with some potential there. But with the Drew Lock pick last year, I was stoked because, of course, he was kind of projected to go high, kind of a little unexpected to see him go in the second round. But once we got Lock in the second round last year, I thought this is Elway's time to finally show that he can follow with what other teams are doing in the NFL, drafting a young QB and having a veteran start before him to develop. And once he's ready, his development is really going to go off and the team will benefit greatly from it. And so I think with all the toys that Drew Lock has now, his development curve is really going to spike. And with also bringing in Pat Shurmur, an offensive guru, I guess, and it's going to look really – I think it's going to look really nice for Denver in the coming year, and they can definitely contend for a wild card spot. And it's going to be a close race, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, I think.
There's a few moving parts in that division outside the Chiefs. You guys get Jeudy because Ruggs goes to the Raiders, his Alabama teammate. Then you get Melvin Gordon, revenge tour, when he plays the Chargers. Where does that kind of leave Phillip Lindsay? Because I really liked him last year. I got him in fantasy, and he was a productive running back.
I think I think it's all about that 1-2 punch that Elway was looking for. And, Phillip Lindsay, he has had a little bit of issues with injuries. I think it was a couple years back he dealt with a wrist injury. And so, with a star running back like Lindsay, you don't want to get him all injury prone. And so when you bring in a guy like Melvin Gordon or any other star running back into the mix, it splits. They're both going to get what they want for reps as far as reps go. And so I guess resting one guy for a little bit and then playing the other guy, I think it's going to turn out really well for them. And, the 1-2 punch scenario, how do defenses combat that that look that the Broncos are pushing towards them. And so I think, that's really going to look nice, having two capable running backs of getting the run game going. And even before, Vic Fangio, the days of Vance Joseph, the running game, they always preach, get the run game going before you can get the passing game going. And so, with two capable running backs in Gordon and Lindsay, I think it's going to, give Drew Lock and the team a lot of comfort at that level there.
What do you think was going through Philip Lindsay's head when like the move first came down?
I do remember. I think he said something where he was disappointed because it was going to present competition to him, and he had to compete for a starting job. But I think he came to the ropes, saying we're going to be a deadly 1-2 punch in this league. We're going to make Denver a real threat on the offense, and so with our talent and skills combined and their own uniqueness, Melvin Gordon's more of a power runner. Lindsay can bring that speed, and he doesn't have the size, but his speed makes up for it. So I think mixing the two together, it's really going to pose some certain threat for defenses, whoever they face. And also another thing, I think I remember seeing that Denver has the third weakest running schedule, like for defenses and their strength against the run defense. It's like the third weakest or something like that. So all the pieces are there for them to have a lot of success this upcoming year.
We talked a lot about the weapons that they've added, but what about the Broncos' offensive line? How much confidence do you have in them? Because pretty much the last time I've heard anything prominent about them is when John Elway decided to hate Garrett Bowles.
Yeah, the offensive tackles are a little bit of an issue, with Garrett Bowles and his holding penalties. I think he had the most holding penalties out of any lineman in the league. And so Juwan James, yes, he's a great player, but he's also injury prone. So, I guess we just kind of have to get lucky with James. And for Bowles, I guess, just getting him ingrained with Pat Shurmur's new offense and, just teaching him how to, maintain your stance, I guess. And I think I have heard something where Bulls did commit less penalties as the season went on when they did bring in Drew Lock. So I guess that is a positive sign to look forward to, but still nothing's guaranteed. So I guess, it's just going to take some more development and teaching Bulls how to, like I said, keep it going, keep your stance up, and we'll see how that goes there. But looking forward to see how that turns out.
He's definitely going to be under the microscope as a 20th overall pick when he got drafted. And talk about a prove-it year. He's going to be starting all 16 games at left tackle for the Broncos basically over his entire career that I'm reading. And even despite all that, Broncos going ahead and declining the fifth-year option on Bowles. So free agent in 2021. Interesting to see where things go along the Broncos offensive line. And one other point about just the decision-making for the team's brain trust here. John Elway, obviously a legend, talked about giving credit to Joe Sakic for the Avs. Thing is, you still have to kind of execute when you're in a position like that. And obviously the Broncos were awesome, like in the Peyton Manning era, and maybe it was a little easy once you saw Peyton come back and be able to perform to get some of those pieces. But at the same time, how much – now I know he's a legend. How much does either Drew Lock hitting as a franchise quarterback or some of these offensive picks or any of these moves kind of seeming to the fan base that it could be a save-the-job type move for Elway? Sure, let's get an explosive offense to help cover up because, other than like getting Peyton, it's been a little stagnant.
Yes, I think it definitely is. We are at a point where, John Elway does have to prove himself, and, the coaching hires, they're not gonna, they're not gonna fix everything. You also got to look at, what are you gonna do for building the team, and coaching hires do help, but you also gotta look at yourself. How can you, like I said, how can you improve this team? From the management position. And, ever since Manning left, Elway, it's been, a few rough drafts for him and, just some kind of questionable decisions from him. I think the fan base knows that too very well. And so, with the Drew Lock pick and what they did this past draft and even the Bradley Chubb draft too. I think Elway's kind of starting to find his way as a manager, find his way. What it's like being the general manager, and with him signing that extension a couple years back, it definitely is a proven deal. But I think there's a little upward trajectory for not only him but for the Broncos team as well.
Want to circle it all up for another franchise cornerstone in Colorado, and that's Nolan Arenado from the Rockies signing a big deal where we didn't always know if the Rockies were a team that could shell out that kind of money in the whole world of baseball spending. But it seems like the team might even be at odds with him already, or the other way around when it comes to the direction of the franchise. I'm kind of curious, like, how you see that happening and how Arenado can kind of allude to something like that. You would think when you sign for hundreds of millions of dollars, the direction of the franchise clearly gets laid out. I know it's easy to get paid that much money, but at the same time, I mean, aren't you a little surprised that maybe they're not on the same page right now?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I was disappointed to hear Nolan, speak out about the franchise, saying, he's displeased right now, and I think that stems from all the trade rumors, going.
He's not like a diva either. Like, he wants to win.
Oh yeah, for sure, and I totally understand too. So, but I think the trade rumors, they kind of got to him a little bit, and he was displeased with them, I would think, and all the sources out there saying, Nolan wants out, Nolan wants to go somewhere else. That it was rough to see that as a Rockies fan, and that happened before Corona took out all of it, and so I think even before the Rockies had those few years where they went to the postseason, their management, I feel, hasn't been up to par. And of course, I think the fans can attest to that too. And so I think the owner, but like you said, they weren't willing to spend a whole lot of money. And the owner, I think that falls on the owner too. And management was also kind of, playing a role in that as well. And so I think they were a little lucky, now that Corona did cancel the baseball, or not cancel, but postpone the baseball season a little bit, and that the focus on that right now. But yeah, it was a little disappointing to see Nolan say that and what the organization is doing. But I completely understand his will to win. So we'll see how it plays out here. I'm hoping he stays because of that long extension and because he's good too. But we'll just see how it plays out. Hopefully it turns out for the best.
Yeah, where do you kind of see his career playing out? Do you feel like he'll be a Rocky for life?
I hope he is. I think if the road gets worse, I may have to consider, and of course other Rockies fans as well, we may have to prep ourselves, for, a major blockbuster trade, because you also got to consider if the team doesn't go back to the days where they were a playoff team a couple of years back. You also got to remember that, what can we do to improve the team if it's subtracting Nolan from the roster and getting all sorts of talent and draft picks in there to build for the future. So I'm hoping he stays with the Rockies for his whole career, but at the same time, I also got to prep just in case, he does get shipped off somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And for guys like us, whether it's Colorado teams or Philadelphia teams, when things aren't going good, nobody's going to be playing the world's smallest violin for us, Cole, unfortunately. And that's the best way I can do from tying pro sports talk to how you're a violin player. I think I pulled that off. What got you into playing that?
Yes. Let's take it off from sports for a second. Nothing wrong with sports. I love sports, but we can talk about something else here real quick. But yes, I do play the violin, although I did have a little bit of a thing happen with the music department at Minot State where I'll get into that a little more here in a second, but it was back in fourth grade where, third grade, I was at Longfellow Elementary School here in town, and the music people had they had time for the kids where they could go to the music room and all the orchestra players could show off their instruments, show off their skills. And I tried out the violin back in elementary school, and I always thought it'd be so cool to play the violin. And so when I got started in fourth grade, I thought, hey, this is kind of a neat little hobby to do. And so, I did it fourth, fifth grade, elementary school. I did it all throughout middle school when I went to Ramstead, and all 4 years of high school I've done it. So it was a long time for me. And of course, props to Mr. Tangestal. He was a great mentor for me. I appreciate him a lot. And of course, all the other orchestra seniors that I graduated with, and all the seniors coming after me. I've been very lucky to have classes with them. And also the seniors that graduated before me, they were all great people, great mentors to be around. And so I decided to do the violin, or to play the violin in college, because it also kind of went with, I was undecided in my major. Going back to what I said earlier, I didn't know Minot State had a broadcasting department, so I was uncertain about a major. And so I guess my backup plan would have been music, playing the violin. And the first few days being in the music department at Minot State, it wasn't too bad. I thought I could probably get used to this. The people were awesome, and they're great people. I loved being around them. But as I went through the semester, one thing happened where I just didn't see fit, and then another thing happened, and it's just all sorts of it was kind of like a domino effect where just one thing happened, and I lost interest for it. And I actually, when I went to sign up for the MSU orchestra, I thought it was just going to be a class in a classroom, but little did I know it was the actual Minot Symphony Orchestra. And so I didn't want to push myself that far. I didn't think, I'm not trying to downplay myself, but I didn't want to be a part of, they were a great group of people, great talent there. I just didn't want to push myself that far. And I guess when I lost that, I just kind of started losing interest, and other things happened in the department. I won't describe them.
Podcast After Dark.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and the podcast too. Like, I also had plans to start the Minot Sports Podcast and music department. There's just kind of so much to handle in there, and it kind of pushed me away. So I said, after first semester, I don't think I'm going to continue music. So, but I actually still have my violin here in my room right now. I haven't touched it since, but I know the church that I go to is looking for a violin player. So hopefully I can continue playing the violin. I'm just kind of in a phase where I just haven't touched it in a while. But I think I may do it for the church, but we'll see how it goes in the future.
If I was you, I would work really hard on learning Devil Went Down to Georgia.
What is that now? Is that
the
like
Charlie Daniels Band hit song, the real fast one?
See, I think I've heard of them before, but
yeah, it's the number one violin song, Cole.
Yeah, I don't. Sorry, I don't know.
Right after this interview, you're gonna look it up. All right, perfect.
Yeah, I have to do my studying because I don't know a whole lot of famous violinists and songs. I do know some pieces of music, but they're like the one famous one you said. I think I've heard of it, but I don't know a whole lot.
You probably heard it before. That's all right. You probably just don't know it by name anyway. But just circling around one more time again. The Minot Sports Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Cole Clementich, the host here, joining the show for us. You kind of talked a little bit at the very beginning about where you see it going maybe in the next year-ish with sports finally coming back. If you had a bigger picture goal for this over the course of the rest of your college career or even beyond, where do you want to take things when it comes to the podcast and broadcasting overall for you?
Just applying everything I learned from, whether it is from Neil or Lee or anyone else in the broadcasting department, and all the classes that I'm taking, all the resources that are available to me, and when I look for the social media, I guess I want to have a large audience. Like I said earlier, I want to grow it gradually because, again, I still have 3 years of college left, and I've already built up a decent audience already on both accounts, and I'm grateful for them for all the support they've given me, and of course all the Minot High kids that have seen it, and all the Minot State people, and of course all the local sports people as well. And I can't thank them enough for all the support they've been giving me. But I guess I want to have as big an audience as I can for the social media, so grow in followers gradually, build bigger connections, keep on using whatever the broadcasting department gives me, take advantage of what I can learn from Neil, from Lee, from all the classes that I've been taking. Heck, I had to deal with kind of a little crisis communication, and I also have to give credit to my other professors, Allison McAfee and Christina Paxman. I did have a little bit of crisis communication learning from Christina and from Allison as well. And so I had to deal with a little bit of that when I was interviewing an athlete on the Instagram live series. I had someone, well, I shouldn't say this out loud actually, but I did kind of have to blur out some comments, I guess.
From the lames?
Yeah, just some people, like they're not the only one that's happened to them. Like, there's going to be some comments in there. I shouldn't call them out specifically because they're good friends of mine, good supporters of mine. But
they got you grounded.
Yeah, I kind of have to tell them, hey, just don't comment this, or otherwise I'm going to have to mute the comment when I post it on Instagram. Or
Not
YouTube.
in front of my mom, guys.
Yeah, but I do kind of have to prepare for a little bit of crisis communication, in case any random stranger or someone else says something rude in the chat or anything like that. Just kind of got to keep the podcast integrity going. But I'm sure they understand. I'm sure that what I did or what they saw that I did, it's they'll know for next time.
What?
But yeah, that's basically.
That's not something we've had to tackle on this show because we don't have integrity on this show, Cole.
Alrighty.
Sounds good, right?
Yep. That's for sure.
Again, this is Cole Clementich, Minot Sports Podcast. Find him on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook real soon. Cole, appreciate you, and let's cross paths again sometime, man.
Thank you, Ben, for having me. I appreciate it.